Good morning. Happy Saturday to you. And if you are joining me live today, then welcome. If you're on the replay, absolutely fine. And I hope you enjoy the presentation because we're going to be talking about presenting online and having impact and influence in your online presentations. My name is John Ball from Present Influence. My work is all about helping working with business coaches, business executives, people who are business owners, and helping them achieve that transformation to becoming amazing, powerful business speakers. So that's what I work on. And if you want to know more about me, you can check out my website, presentinfluence.com. And you can also catch me daily on the Daily Present, as well as my two podcasts, the main one being Speaking of Influence, which is all about speaking and presentation skills, and the other one being Points of Change, a new show which is just coming into its launch at the moment. So if you want to know more about me, you can follow me on YouTube. So look for Present Influence on YouTube. You will find me there, and give us a like and subscribe and click that bell icon to make sure you get notified of all the latest stuff coming out and any live shows as well. Okay, so let's get into today's presentation. No fancy titles for you, but I do have a slideshow. So we're going to switch over to that, and I'm going to put my camera in the corner so you can still see me as well. And let's get things started. So you have come here today for the Present and Persuade online presentation. So it's great to see you. If you have any questions or comments, please do enter them into the chat box. If I can address them as we go through, I will. Sometimes it might make more sense to wait till later on. I will have a full Q&A, Ask Me Anything, at the end of the presentation if you want to stick around for that. And I'll also be telling you at the end where you can go if you want to know more about this. Remember, I promised no sales today, just a presentation that hopefully is going to be educational and informative for you. So let's get into Present and Persuade online. So my name is John Ball, and as you can see here, I'm getting the wrong thing in the background. That's meant to be a Spanish flag. It's kind of a bit weird. So I live in Spain. I'm not from Spain, though. I'm English and from the UK originally. Been living in Spain for about 8.5 years, and I absolutely love it. Have a wonderful life here, and even got married here. The picture you see of me there is at a Toastmasters convention where I was competing in a public speaking competition. Actually won first place in that competition. That's accompanied by Lammy. Whatever happened to Lammy, I don't know. He pops up from time to time. So Lammy's are still around, and Lammy helped me win that particular competition. So I came in first place there. I am an award-winning speaker and a presenter as well, and I do love speaking and presenting. It's become my passion, which is one of the reasons why I have podcasts that's exactly about that, and one of the reasons why I do this kind of work and presentation. So that's what we're here for today. Let's get into it. Here's what I would like for you to be able to take away from today's presentation. So the ability to overcome fears, increasing your confidence, clarity of your outcomes, what the work that you do and the speeches and presentations you do, becoming more charismatic, having more energy what you do, a little sprinkling of magic, where you can go to find out more, and let's also have some fun, if that's okay. So let's get into it. Who has ever felt that horrible, gurgling, wrenching feeling in the pit of their stomach when they've had to give a talk or a presentation? You maybe even start trembling, and your heart feels like it's in your throat, pounding away in your chest. And it can be really, really intense. We all know what that fear feels like. And yet, we can actually not just channel that energy, but improve our performance and our situation utilizing that fear, and we can actually use that to step into confidence instead. So the first element that we want to get into is thinking about confidence. So what do you think I mean when I'm talking about confidence? Am I just saying, oh, you have to fake it till you make it? You have to just get up there and be super extroverted? No, I'm actually not saying that at all. Confidence, really, real confidence, is that inner feeling that you can do this, you've got this, you're in your wheelhouse, you can easily do this, you can be comfortable doing it as well. It's that almost sense of calm that this is what you can do, this is within your capabilities, rather than the fear, which is usually projecting the worst possible expectations and outcomes for what could happen, what's everything that could go wrong. It seems our brains are wired in such a way that we more naturally go towards thinking about what is going to go wrong. Now, this is probably evolutionary speaking, is that the right word? Evolutionarily speaking, is probably a good thing. Without it, we might not even be here. And that means that that part of our thinking has kept us safe. It's probably the thing that kept our ancestors alive throughout the centuries. If you thought that if you heard a rustling in the trees, it might be the breeze, or it could be a wild animal that's about to find its lunch. And so the ones who are kind of, oh, okay, it's probably nothing, it's probably just the wind, are the ones who probably didn't survive. So nature maybe in some ways has sorted for the people who thought, oh, it might be a wolf, it might be a lion, it might be a bear, and kept us safe. Now, we don't have nearly as many existential threats on a daily basis as our ancestors did. However, our brains haven't really moved on from that very much. So our brains are still looking for danger points everywhere and still looking for all the potential things that could go wrong as a means to keep us safe. So what do we do if we want to change that, if we want to overcome that? Well, we absolutely have to accept that that is a reality for us, but there are things that we can do to improve our situation. We can ground ourselves for starters, which really can just involve something as simple as breathing. Slowing down our breathing, just breathing in through your nose, nice deep breaths, and breathing out through your mouth, nice deep breaths out as well. And if we can manage to actually breathe a little bit longer out than in, so let's say you breathe in for 4 seconds, breathe out for 6 seconds. A good way of doing this, ones that meditation teachers will, and yoga teachers will often do, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, and then breathe out for 6. Just doing this also means you're pulling your focus away from your fear-based mind. You're forcing your heart rate to slow down and normalize, and you're going to feel calmer as a result. Is that going to give you confidence? No, but it's going to be a good starting place for you to at least feel a bit calmer. Confidence really comes from experience. Confidence is the ability to predict an outcome that you want, that is what you could actually expect to have. So we like having that sort of confidence. We like being able to know what comes next. And when we don't know what's coming up or we can't predict it, we tend to imagine the worst nearly every time. And that's just as true when you're doing presentation and public speaking work as well. So experience will be one of the things that will help with confidence. But if you can find the people who can help you make the shortcuts to getting that mindset and the knowledge and tools of the pro speakers and presenters, you're going to be able to present that feeling of confidence and feel much more secure when you do it. You will then feel more confident when you're presenting. Now, I would say in terms of charisma, which we'll be coming to a bit later on as well, confidence probably is one of the most important elements of it in terms of what makes people attractive to other people, not just talking about sexual attraction, but what makes people generally more attracted to people. Confidence is right up there. So whether your situation is like one-to-one coaching or in a small meeting, whether you are presenting in front of an audience, whether you're at a business networking event, whatever it is, even if you're doing online presenting, being able to come across with confidence, with clarity, with charisma is going to make a big difference to you. And that means you need to have some of the skills and some of the know-how to be able to deliver that. Now, a big part of this, and a big part of actually looking confident as well, is being able to control your movement. Now, you can't see a lot here because I'm just in this little circle at the top of your screen. So there's not really a lot of movement for me to control, although I do still need to try and stay in the frame of the camera. So I have to stay observant of that. When you're doing more of a full screen presentation, people can see your hands more. And when you're doing for video and online presentation, really that's all you've got in terms of movement. Try and stay in the shot of the camera as best you can and utilize your hand movements as well, but keep them controlled. Like if your hands are ringing or fiddling with a pen or doing something that's irritating or distracting to your audience, you're going to look nervous. You're going to feel nervous. Your audience are going to know it, and they'll be paying more attention to the thing that's distracting than to the amazing presentation that you're delivering. So controlling your movement is very important. If you do find yourself in a live presentation situation, you're presenting to the board, or you're at a networking meeting, maybe you're giving a talk there, wherever you might be doing a real world presentation that people can see you, one of the worst things that you can do is to be shifting about on the spot. Even if I do it here, you can just see me bobbing around. And it's one of these things, again, that just signals that you don't have confidence. And we see people doing it all the time. You see new speakers doing it. You see new stand-up comedians doing it a lot. And it's okay that you can see that people have nerves. But if you are aiming for being a pro and you really want to look and feel confident doing this, you really do have to work on planting yourself to the spot and making sure that the only times you move are when you intend to move. So you move with volition instead of unconscious movement. It's essential to be able to practice this. Now, I will give you a tip here. One of the best things you can do to help you in being able to control movement is to practice a presentation with no movement at all. Like, actually, maybe more or less tie your hands to your side, but keep them gripped onto the arm of a chair, however you're practicing, but with no movement at all. So your feet are firmly stuck on the floor, your hands are firmly in one place, in your pockets if you have to. That's going to help you to cut out unwanted movement, and do that at least until you feel that you actually are aware that you're not moving. Now, another way you could do this is just by videoing yourself and watching it. However, I would say, the first thing to do, take away what we don't want before we start adding anything that we do. Let's not overcomplicate things. Now, a good thing to be thinking about is your tonality. Tonality is super important in being able to deliver a good presentation. So you don't have to have the most amazing voice. Like some people who speak to, they just have beautiful voices and you could feel like you could listen to them all day long, like honey dribbling down a gangplank. Not everybody has that, and that's okay. It's actually a good thing not everyone has that, because differentiation in voices is something that can help you to stand out. However, we do still need to make the most of our voice. If I start giving a presentation and I'm saying everything at the same level, so I really start talking in more of a monotone and there's no real emotion to my voice, and what I'm talking about might be as fascinating as hell, but it's really hard to listen to because it's all at that one tone. That tonality is going to be tough. If your voice is super high and squeaky, just do your best to try and bring it down into a lower register, because honestly, the reality is deeper, lower voices do tend to carry more gravitas, more weight to them. So if you want to get that sense of people listening to you and feeling like they should pay attention, the kind of tonality you need to have is probably somewhere a bit lower. If your voice is super deep and only whales can hear you, then you probably need to aim at taking it up a little bit higher as well. What we really want, though, we want variety of voice. Now, if you ever go to any kind of public speaking organization or club like Toastmasters International or Carnegie trainings, you will hear about vocal variety and how important that is. What do people mean then when they say vocal variety? They're talking about being able to change up your voice, so not being monotone, not being just one level of energy as well. And so you can take it a bit higher sometimes. You can get a bit more excited and speed up, or you can slow things down and get people feeling a bit more chilled and relaxed. There's so many beautiful things that you can do with your voice by playing with it, and you don't have to be a professional vocalist. You don't have to be a singer. You don't have to be trained in this. You can just play around with your voice. One of the most powerful things that you can do in speaking, which is something that I have to remind myself to do on a regular basis, isn't so much about tonality, but sometimes just taking a pause and allowing yourself and your audience a chance to breathe. So let's get into tonality. There are three main things you need to know about tonality. There is a questioning tonality. So, Australians are generally very good at this. If you're Australian and listening to me, you should know this. So everything sounds like a question, and I have to excuse my Australian accent, but when you're in Australia, people can talk like everything and goes up at the end. So everything sounds like you might be asking a question. And it's that questioning, that interrogative kind of level of communication, which you can get used to it. But for professional presentations, you really don't want to be doing that unless you are actually asking a question. So the upwards intonation at the end of a sentence is a great thing to do if you're asking a question, especially if you're asking a question that isn't a rhetorical question. Like if you're asking a question that you don't really want your audience to answer back to you, just want them to go, oh yeah, that they know the answer, then perhaps don't do the questioning tonality at the end. Although you could, it would still work. But for anything that you do actually want a response for, make sure you have that. Are you listening to me today or watching me today because you're bored? Are you watching me today because you want to know more about professional presenting online? These are the kinds of ways we can ask these questions. The other is a statement tonality. So it's kind of like newsreader voice, right? You're delivering the news. It's kind of steady. It's at a neutral sort of pace. So just delivering information. Today outside, it's sunny. We are in the month of February. It's really kind of staying at that sort of level. It's somewhere in the mid-range. And so you're making statements, delivering information. It's a great one to use and can be overused. But because I see people deliver whole presentations in this statement tonality. And again, without the variety there, it can get a little bit boring. So we don't really want to be that all the time, but that probably is where we will spend most of our time. We also have command tonality. So that is giving an instruction. So you say, okay, ask me a question into the chat box. You'll see that at the end of that, my intonation goes down. So I'm giving a request, an instruction, ask me a question into the chat box. Hang on till the end of the call. So it sounds, you get that sense of, yeah, okay, that's something I'm being asked to do. Now, of course, you don't have to do it. This isn't, we're not authoritarians here. We're just asking the question, but it's that command tonality. And it's probably one of the least used of all the vocal ranges, particularly in people who don't feel all that confident. So if you don't feel very confident, you are least likely probably to use the command tonality because you also probably don't feel comfortable giving requests and instructions to your audience. And that's going to be critical for you to work on. For now, the only thing you need to know, I see my green screen is going a bit weird here, but so now the only thing you need to know is that there are 3 levels of tonality. So I think you can't really see the statement tonality. I was trying a different thing with the presentation with the slideshow today, and it seems to be giving you my virtual background instead of, I'm just going to see if I can turn off the green screen here, and that might make all the difference. Just bear with me a sec. So none. There we go. Okay, that should make things a lot better. So now you can see it, the statement tonality that's going right out in front, the command tonality going below. Okay, I'm learning as well as you. So how we think of ourselves is super important here. And if you are telling yourself that you are not confident, you already have a battle to climb. You have a mountain to climb. So if you keep telling yourself, I'm not confident, I can't do this, or I'm too nervous, or I'll never be able to pull it off, I'm not going to be good enough, other people are so much better than me, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too short, I'm too tall. Whatever it is you're telling yourself as your reason not to is probably the reason why you should, and also really says much more about what you're really thinking about yourself. Could be a hint that perhaps there's a bit of work to do on some of those insecurities that you have about yourself, because I promise you, if you're delivering great information and you're having fun in delivering it and doing just enjoying yourself on whatever platform you're on, people aren't going to be thinking nearly as much about what you look like or how you sound. They're going to enjoy it with you. So your energy is super important, and a lot of that comes from how you see yourself. I love that image of the kitten seeing the tiger in the mirror there. And we do want to work on at least thinking better of ourselves. And there's a book that I really love. Maybe you come across it. It's called The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. If you've ever come across it, one of the agreements is to be impeccable with your word. Now, I love all of the agreements, actually. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. But the one that's most important here is to be impeccable with your word. Why is that important? Well, because it's about talking well of others, not talking down of others, not crap talking people, not putting others down, but also not doing that to yourself. And we tend to be much harsher with ourselves than we ever would be with anyone else. That's just a tendency. It may not always be true. Unless you've actually been conditioned or have conditioned yourself to be kinder to yourself, to talk better about yourself, there's a good chance that when you look in the mirror, you don't just see a reflection, you see all the baggage that comes with that reflection and everything that you've come to believe about yourself over the years. If we can't work on changing that internal conversation that you have about how you feel about yourself when you see yourself or when others see you, then you may find yourself stuck in a position you don't want to be in. And like many things in life, often the only thing that's really standing between you and the success or the achievements you'd like to have is yourself. Getting in your own way, your own beliefs and limitations. So your self-image is absolutely vital as a speaker and as a presenter, because that's what you end up projecting out into the world. What you believe about yourself, you will project out. And when other people come back and validate things about you, whether it's good things or bad things, it seals the deal, if you like. It reaffirms for you all those things that you may feel about yourself. It might heighten your insecurities, or it might even build up your ego. But ultimately, it all relates to what you're projecting out into the world. So consider this yourself. Your feelings about yourself, if you think other people will pick up on them, there are some people who are exactly looking for that and looking to be able to pick up on your weak points, your insecurities. And if you don't work on them yourself and getting to be okay with yourself, working on loving yourself as who you are, you're projecting out an image of yourself into the world that is never going to be fully supportive for you. We all have many different emotional states. And as a presenter and as a speaker, we want to be able to get into all of them as much as possible. We can try them on. We can actually take responsibility for how we feel and change how we feel. So if, for example, I ask you to think about the last time you can remember really laughing so hard that your stomach hurt, that you could barely breathe, when was that time? What was it that made you laugh so hard? Even as you think about that now, it's going to start associating you back into that memory of that time you laughed so hard. Now I want you to think about the last thing that made you cry. What was the last thing that made you cry? As soon as we start thinking about that, we're taken back to that moment, back to that emotion. We start associating back into it. What was the last time that somebody did something that made you go, ooh, oh, ooh, what are you doing? Again, we start to go back into that emotion. When were you last angry with somebody? When did you last have to tell somebody else to stop or to do something and change what they were doing? Okay, so we get the idea. Even just thinking about these emotional states, even just thinking about these situations in our own life, takes us back into the emotion. It influences us. Let's go back to that time that we were thinking about when we laughed so hard we could barely breathe, right? Because that's a nicer one to a nicer emotional state to leave ourselves in. This is just as important when you're speaking or presenting. You have to be in an appropriate emotional state for your audience. But you also have to turn it up a little bit more than you otherwise would. So this isn't like hanging out with your pals after work. This really is about a performance level of energy. You just have to turn those dials up a little bit more. I've talked about this in one of my live videos this week, of this thing of, if you you know that advice that sometimes Simon Cowell will give on X Factor or Britain's Got Talent or whatever show it is, be you but be more you. You know the one. And what does that even mean, right? You know, people think, oh, be me but be more me. How can you be more me? What I believe that really means is about turning up the dials. that you can crank it up. You can be a more extroverted version of yourself. Just turn up the dials, turn up the energy, and be more of who you really are. Like, stay true to yourself. Don't try to be a clown or be something you're not, unless that's what you're aiming for. But be true to yourself, but project it out more. Don't hold anything back. That's about being more you. So get comfortable and get familiar with changing your emotional states, because it's going to allow you to take your audience on an emotional journey as well when you're speaking or presenting, whatever it is. Even in professional business environments, we think emotions aren't really so important, but they're absolutely vital. So when you look in the mirror, give yourself at least one affirmation, right? Give yourself a smile. Tell yourself, hey, you look good today. Look good today. Even if you don't believe it, let's be a little bit kinder. Let's be a bit more impeccable with our word to ourselves, and see if we can practice the same kindness I hope that we choose to show to other people in how we talk to ourselves. Let me grab a sip of my coffee here. My coffee guy here in Valencia makes the best coffee. Stephen, super guy. Okay, who's ever heard of power posing? Power posing. If you've ever come across Amy Cuddy, she's great. She's a great speaker. She has a very well-known TED Talk, and the TED Talk is about power pose. So that's really where you stand in a superhero posture, your hands on your hips, and trying to put the wrong screen forward. Hands on your hips, elbows pointing outwards, and feet wide apart, but not too wide on the floor. That's your power pose. So the elbows need to be out there as well. So your superhero pose, that if you do that for a few minutes or a few moments before you go onto stage or before you do a presentation, you're going to feel like a superhero. You're going to feel super powered. And that's going to prepare you. Like, even just thinking about that for a few moments is going to help you to feel more confident. Well, interestingly enough, research into this, and probably one of the reasons you don't really hear Amy talking about this so much every day, further research has gone to show us that that's probably bullshit. Thank you, and the Shellstrop, for allowing me not to have to cuss on my on my live stream. So it's actually not really true, and that they haven't been able to replicate the results. It's not going to do you any harm, right? I don't think it's going to hurt you at all, but it's actually not going to help you either all that much. What is going to help you, though, is talking better to yourself. Give yourself a bit of a juice up. One of the best ways I think that you can pump yourself up for any kind of presentation, in my opinion, is to create a playlist on Spotify of music that really gets you pumped up. So I wonder if I can actually share one of my tracks here. I might struggle to do that, but I just have this playlist that's called Pump It Up, and that's my pump it up playlist that I'll put on for myself before I'm giving any kind of big presentation. And if I can get myself somewhere where there aren't too many people around, I'm going to put that on in my headphones and dance around to it and get lost in that moment. First of all, it helps me to calm down and take my mind off being nervous, but also it gets me having fun. It gets my heart pumping in a good way, and it actually works out some of that nervous energy, and I feel super confident. More than anything, I feel really happy after doing it. And I do think it's one of the quickest ways to get yourself happy for a presentation, is to actually take yourself somewhere and give yourself a bit of a pep through powerful music. Now, if music isn't your thing, maybe you want to do affirmations. Hey, try the power posing. If it works for you, I'm not going to knock it. Just that the research doesn't actually back it up scientifically. And I like the scientific stuff. I'm just kind of like that. So we want to make sure we have clarity in what we talk about as well. Now, as someone who does a lot of speaker training, I know that this is an area that I often have to work with people on, because some people lack clarity in massive amounts, And so if that's the case, I have a message from Chris. Okay, Chris, I'll come back to the end. So if you can watch the replay, I'll answer those questions at the end of the presentation, if that's okay. So clarity right now is to make sure that your message, that you know what your message is, and that it's understood by your audience, so that they can see clearly. Now, I have at least several times worked with some people who have wonderful delivery, are actually really great at being able to present information and deliver the information, but the information itself didn't make sense, or the message didn't hit home. it didn't make sense to the audience. Like, it seemed like, in one particular case, it just seemed like the lady who was speaking knew what she wanted to say. Like, it was really in her heart, and she was so passionate about it, but nothing that was coming out of her mouth was making sense. It was a series of non sequiturs that was just like, okay, I really have no idea what I'm listening to. I'm enjoying the experience because the presentation is and the delivery is really good, but the actual message itself was lost, if there even was one. Now, I had several times aimed to give feedback, and gave the feedback that the message, the outcome of your presentation needs to be clear. That needs to be the first thing that you have when you're going to speak. So let's say you're going to a business networking meeting, right? And so you may not be doing a formal presentation, but you are going to be presenting yourself. You're maybe going to be delivering your elevator pitch, right? So you want to have that as your outcome. What's your outcome? Your outcome is for people to understand you, what you do, your services, your work, why you do it, who you help, and how, and to find out more about them quickly as well, to make those connections. So that's going to be your intention from your elevator pitch. Then you need to make sure all those bits of information are in there in a way that's hopefully engaging, and also allows people to get to know you very quickly, so that you can be prepared for it, and you're not struggling to find the words or to explain yourself, because not everyone is so good or comfortable on the spot, for sure. So you want to have that clarity of outcome. But if you're actually doing a talk or a presentation in front of people, let's say, for example, you're delivering an event, a speech to a company, and they've asked you to talk about your area of expertise. If the outcome of your presentation isn't clear, if you don't really have a message that you want them to take home, you're never going to know if you've actually achieved your outcome or not. You're just going to be talking, and some people are going to listen, and people might even enjoy it for a bit, but it's just going to be noise at the end of the day. And what use is a great presentation if nobody remembers it afterwards? So your delivery was the first bit we were looking at, but the clarity is the next bit, because there are so many different elements and moving parts to public speaking. But this part is really the heart of communication. We talked a bit about the how you say it, but this is talking about the what you say, very much about the message that you have. What is it that you most want to deliver to people? What's in your heart? What's the thing that you can help them with? What's the thing that you want to make a difference with? So that's the thing to be thinking about. So think about it. Think about your message, your result, your outcome that you want to achieve. And not just your outcome for yourself, but I want you to consider your outcome for your audience more than anything else. Because, as any good speaker trainer will tell you, it's about them, it's not about you. So take yourself out of the equation even for a bit. Your outcome is still important, but their outcome is the priority. That's what it's all about. Because any good speaker is just kind of pissing in the wind if they don't have a message and an outcome for their audience. You're just massaging your own ego. You're just kind of delivering the goods to yourself and preaching to the choir of one, which is you. So if this is just about you, I'm not saying you won't get any attention, that you won't get any results or outcome, but you'll go a lot further, a lot faster if you make it about them and not about you. Consider the outcome then primarily for your audience, for your message, for yourself. You are at the bottom of the pyramid, if you like, in terms of the most important parts to be considering for outcomes. So how much money you want to make from it, how big you want to grow your speaking career, or whatever it is, whatever your outcomes are, they are still important, but they're not as nearly important as the outcome of your audience. Avoid overload as well. Now, not just for yourself. Like, this is a thing that stops many speakers, right? And it's one of trying to learn too much, or trying to not really getting to a point where it's like, okay, I know enough now. You're never going to get to that point where you know enough, and you're never going to get to a point where you finished learning. That's the reality of it. So if you're waiting until you're experienced enough, until you know enough, until you're authoritative, whatever it is you're waiting for, stop waiting and just start doing. And so don't overload yourself with information. You're never going to be finished on your journey of learning until we take our last breath. But avoid overloading your audience too. If you overload your audience with information, then you're going to blow their brains, not in a good way. So to give them simple, digestible chunks of information, things that are easily absorbed in a way that is easy to absorb it, that is entertaining and enjoyable. So this is what we would call chunking, content chunking. And what a tendency is, especially with coaches, I work with a lot of professional coaches, especially business coaches, and the tendency is to try and deliver as much information as possible in the time that you have. So if in this hour that I've scheduled this event today, if in this hour I tried to deliver as much as I know, I think we'd need more than an hour, but also you would just feel overloaded. It would be too much. You'd be like, oh my goodness, slow down. This is too much, right? If you're giving maybe a 5 to 7 minute presentation, which is the standard Toastmasters length of presentation, you're going to really only want 1 or 2 pieces of chunks of information in there that you can expand upon, because it's not a lot of time to deliver information. For 15 to 20 minutes, really only 3. If you have an hour, even then, maybe you could go up to 5. An hour or more, probably 5. But even then, you need to make sure that each of those is fairly evenly weighted as much as possible. Because the reality is less is more. And so, your information in the context of everything else that may be going on in people's lives, in people's brains, less is more. A small bit of learning, like if somebody takes away one thing from your presentation, in fact, I think that's always a good thing to ask yourself. If people only remembered one thing from what I present or talk about, what's the one thing that I most want them to remember? If you've got that, you are always going to be memorable. It's okay if they only remember one thing from your talk or presentation, but if you have that, you are already going to stand out from the crowd, from everybody else. If you overwhelm people with information, they will tune out. Ultimately, they will tune out, and they might think you know a lot, but they're also going to think you're also going to overload me. You're also going to give me way too much, and I need my information dripped out. In fact, research now shows, I don't know if you do any kind of online course creation or anything like that, but the research now shows that most people who buy online courses and programs never even start them, let alone finish them. And one of the biggest reasons for that is the level of chunking of information. Like, people are dishing it all out. Like, give you a 1.5, 2 hour presentation on the first part of a course, and the same for the next part, or it might be broken down into 30-minute videos and stuff. What we're actually finding is that the most effective way to be able to deliver that kind of information and content is drip. So small, very digestible chunks of information that are delivered really, really clearly, because you're going to be almost hand-holding people through a presentation, which is going to give them much more chance of actually getting through it and absorbing the information appropriately. A good thing to aim for is some social distancing. Now, we're all social distancing at the moment, right? So, or most of us at least anyway. If you're in New Zealand, maybe not so much, but we're all practicing social distancing. I want you to do a different kind of social distancing to help you out here as well, which is to distance yourself from consuming social media. And that really isn't it. I'm not saying stay off Facebook, stay off LinkedIn, stay off, none of that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying stay off them as a consumer as much as you can. Excuse me a second. The reason for that being that the whole time that you are consuming, you're not creating. When you are consuming, you really, I've been listening to is it Traffic Secrets by Russell Brunson this week. Actually, a pretty good book. I'm not like a ClickFunnels fanatic or anything like that, but the book is really good. It was recommended to me by one of my pals, and he was talking about this as well. This idea that you need to really spending probably no more than 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes twice a day on social media for fun. If you're doing any more than that, it's wasting your time. It's eating up your time. It's money lost. A good friend of mine calls television the income reducer. Like, time watching TV is time wasted because so many people spend their days watching TV. I think that's less so now. More people are like to spend the time on Instagram, YouTube, and streaming services than just watching terrestrial TV these days, for sure. But if you are consuming, you're probably not doing so much of the creating. And the goal here really should be to move more to the creator side of the equation than the consumer, which means you have to start adapting yourself to be able to create more content. And that means that the only time you should really be absorbing other people's content on social media or otherwise, other than when you're in your own personal relaxation time, is to see what they're doing, see what other people are doing that you can maybe learn from and model and do your own version of that, not to copy them, right? I don't want plagiarism here, highly discourage plagiarism, but you may be able to model other people and see what they're doing. It's always been a good strategy for moving things forward. But distance yourself from consuming social media and all the information that comes at us. I mean, could you take a day or a week off the news channels, the 24-hour news network, free up your mind from all the information that comes at us from the day, and see if you can commit to putting some of the knowledge and information that you've learned about areas that you care about and are passionate about into content that can actually go out to other people, and realize that the world is going to keep going regardless of everything that's going on. If it comes to an end, everyone comes to an end anyway. And if it keeps going, you're going to be far better off focusing on what you can affect and control than feeling helpless in the face of everything else that's going on in the world. So give yourself a bit of distance from not just from social media, but from media in general. You will feel better for it as well. You'll probably feel a bit clearer, a bit less stressed about things. And stop worrying so much about what you say or how you say it. Just whilst you want to work on these things, we always spend far more time worrying about what other people think of us than probably anyone ever spends thinking about what they think about us. Most of us spend our time. In fact, you're asking yourself, what do other people think of me? Just realize probably most other people are asking themselves exactly the same question rather than actually thinking about you. So unless you're really giving them something to think about specifically that you want them to, that's fine. I know that when I was growing up, I had this paranoia that people were talking about me all the time, and every time I felt like if someone laughed, they were probably laughing at me, and so I was really insecure and paranoid. And at some point it switched, and I realized that, hey, look, if people are talking about me, great, and maybe I'm doing something, at least I'm doing something that's being talked about. I'm not being ignored. And if they're not, then that's okay too. But other people's opinion of me, and this is just as true for you, other people's opinion of me is none of my business. Other people's opinion of you is none of yours either. So only go to people for opinions whose opinions you value. And for people whose opinions you don't value, as the great RuPaul would say, pay them no mind if they're not paying your bills, right? We also want to have some charisma, and this is a really critical part of being able to present and deliver online. Now, you don't have to be a game show host, right? You don't have to be super high energy. In fact, for many people, that can be just completely overloading and they hate that. But if that's your natural energy and you don't feel inclined to dial it down a bit, then great, that may work for you and you're going to attract your tribe. But if it's not, don't try and aspire to that. We talked about being yourself but turning up the dials. Having that and the confidence and all these other elements is going to give you the ability to have charisma. Now, for me, charisma, a big part of that is confidence. A big part of that is smiling and connection and empathy for your audience as well. So actually really caring about them and about yourself. So these are the things that I think give charisma. And so it's not about ego. It's not about like, hi, I'm the best. I can give the slickest presentation and I know all the tips and tricks that there are to know. It's much more about who you are. So you don't need to be this guy who's like, you don't need to be in love with yourself and showing off and trying to project this super ego. This is something that you can do. This is actually about you, just about you, normal you, regular you, turning up the dial a bit more and going for it and having fun doing it as well. Because having fun, being engaged, enjoying what you do is always going to give you more charisma. Is always going to be much more possible for people to enjoy it with you. So when you're presenting, when you're speaking, aim to smile, but not just smile, have something called a Duchenne smile. Now you can see this here, it's a really big smile. It's the mouth is wide, but also, if we get the slide to go, so the corners of the mouth are turned up, and you can see that it's a really big smile. It's a genuine, authentic smile. But what we also see is that the eyes are also turned up as well. So it's not a fake smile, it's a real smile. Aim to have this smile on your face as much as possible. One of the things is it's going to give you a hit of dopamine and is going to make you feel better. When we smile, we automatically start to feel better, but not a fake smile, not a like, yeah, I'm tolerating you kind of smile, because we can spot that a mile off, and audiences can spot it a mile off as well. But a real, genuine smile, this is sometimes called smizing. So we're going to work on smizing. You can see here this lady in the picture is doing a beautiful job of smiling, not just with her mouth, but with her eyes. So we get the sense that her whole face is smiling. Aim to do this. Put yourself in this. Do this before you go on to any performance, whether it's a virtual presentation or a real presentation. If it's a network meeting, people are going to feel that they can really connect with you, and it's going to make you instantly approachable and likable by other people as well. We like people who are smiling. It gives us that sense of a lack of danger, a lack of threat as well. It's on a psychological basis, it's only beneficial. I talked earlier as well about giving yourself a mood boost when you're presenting. So create your own playlist of really cool songs that just pump you up and get you fired up, and it only needs to be a couple, but I think I have at least 20 songs on that playlist, and so I can put whatever I'm in the mood for that I feel is going to be most appropriate. But if you can get yourself something, like if you have to go to the loos and lock yourself in a cubicle, put it on your headphones and dance around in the cubicle, but actually dance around to it and get your own serotonin lifted, get your own dopamine boost, and get your energy into a place where you're focused on having fun and enjoying yourself, rather than feeling scared or worrying if you're going to mess it up or anything like that. So unleash your creativity, unleash your energy, and let your colors fly. And you'll see that once you give yourself permission to do this, you're also giving your audience permission to do the same. And that's one of the things. That's just one of the things that people will love about you, or can love about you, as a presenter and as a speaker. So don't hold back. Don't get in your own way with any of this. Don't be the person who's you just think you're doing the best and that you've absolutely nailed that board meeting, and everyone else is tuned out. They're asleep at the desk, they're checking their emails, and you've just given what you think is a great presentation, but nobody cares. Get good with your communication is one of the things in neurolinguistic programming. One of the tenets of neurolinguistic programming is that the meaning of communication is what is understood by the person being communicated to. So it means, like, if I say something to you, my communication isn't about what I've said, it's about what you've understood. So I have to take responsibility for the person receiving my communication to understand that. That's why often, especially if you're doing a workshop or anything like that, where it's more of an in-person rather than a presentation, that it's a good idea to stop and check in. What do people understand by that? What do they like about it? What's the take home for them? How could they use what they've been learning? So it's a really good idea to check in. If you're in a business meeting or a board meeting, again, it's a good idea to have that check in. What do you understand by that? And this is what I meant by that. Is that what everyone got? Just getting that level of clarity in your communication can also really set you apart. But communicate clearly. So you want clarity, confidence, and charisma in your communication, where you're not holding yourself back. Because this is the true leadership skill. Communication, powerful presentation is the true leadership skill. Presentation skills, public speaking skills are often referred to as soft skills. Now, I know that I am very much in agreement with speaker Carmine Gallo, who has some great books actually on public speaking, and a very good speaker himself, that it isn't a soft skill, and it shouldn't be called a soft skill. It should be called a critical skill. It definitely should be called the #1 leadership skill, because it absolutely is. Being able to present well,
being able to speak well and communicate well is really, in my opinion, the #1 leadership skill that people need, especially now. If you are in business, if you are a business coach, a business owner, if you're a business networker, or if you are a business executive, a C-suite, whoever you are in business, you are expected to be able to speak well and present well. It is an absolutely critical leadership skill. So work on your ability to communicate. It will stand you out from the crowd. Just imagine, for example, if you were around at the time of Apple building up, and you were asked to go and give Steve Jobs lost his voice one day, and you were asked to go and give his presentation for him. Would you be able to do that? Would you be able to deliver it? What stood him apart from so many other people was his ability to present and communicate with a level of clarity and charisma and passion for what he does that made him stand out as a very impactful and competent and powerful leader, so much so that he's still very much missed today. Now, I think Tim Cook is still very great at this as well. Other particularly good people in this level of communication are people like Barack Obama. He's a great speech maker. I don't know if he does any input in writing his speeches, but he's certainly great at delivering them. And his wife Michelle as well, both great at being able to make speeches. I would also say, as much as I'm not a fan, Boris Johnson is very good at being able to deliver speeches. He has a real gift for it. If you can actually get up onto any platform and being able to deliver competently, to have some interesting ways of how you talk and things that you talk about, to keep people engaged in what you're doing, and to even have some laughter or some fun in there too, it really is going to allow you to stand out as a leader. And it is probably the most critical leadership skill at the moment. In fact, I would say for business owners and for business coaches, if you can't do this, you might end up finding yourself becoming irrelevant in the business right now, because the ability to entertain and to educate is going to be absolutely critical. And we call it edutaining is a word that has been made up specifically for this, but edutaining, the ability to be able to give information in an entertaining way that is engaging and can allow people to join in and stay tuned in for a while, is really critical for being able to stay relevant and stay noticed in business. We see people these days, like, if you're not actively doing these things online or wherever, you are going to become irrelevant very quickly. That's just the way things are right now. So I talked about having empathy for your audience. This is probably the most important thing that you can do. Care about them, care about the people you want to serve. Great leadership really is about service, about serving the people who are your audience, your tribe, looking for what they need help with the most, the gifts, the talents, the knowledge that you have that can most be of help and service to other people. That is going to set you apart every single time as well. So I want you to visualize it. If you can, close your eyes just for a moment and visualize yourself as a confident, powerful leader, presenter, being able to have fun with your presentations, being able to talk really well about yourself. Imagine yourself, you are on a stage or a virtual platform, and you're having fun, and your audience is having fun, and they're engaging with you, and they're loving it, and you're getting great feedback from what you're doing as well. Just imagine that for a moment. I think visualizing these things is really powerful, because I want that visualization for you to allow that to be something that pulls you towards making that your reality as well. Okay, so it is time to share. I don't know if we have many people online at the moment. If you have questions or comments, feel free to type into the chat box at the moment. I do have one question from Chris. So Chris says, sorry, I have to leave. Can you advise on the techniques to use when presenting online to a multi-language audience using English as the presentational language? Yeah, actually, yes, because I've done it. So you do need to make sure, especially with an audience that doesn't have English as their first language, that you are speaking as clearly as possible. You may even have to go slower than you feel comfortable with in order to be able to do that, because it's far more important that you feel that you get the communication across, then that you get your presentation done as quickly as possible. So the goal of your communication is that for people to be able to do that. Now, if you have people who are translating whilst you're speaking, you do need to have pauses, and possibly slightly longer pauses, to allow them the chance to translate that, especially if you're telling a joke. So if you're telling a joke or using some humor in your presentation, give a slightly longer pause, because first of all, you hopefully get a laugh from the English speakers. And then a few moments later, you'll probably get a laugh from the people who are having the presentation translated for them. So yes, as much as possible, go down to probably even slower than you would normally deliver. Aim to have your presentation as clear as possible. Stay well away from idiomatic language as much as possible, because many idioms of English do not translate into other countries, that they don't always use them, so they don't always exist. We use much more metaphorical language than we even realize. So check your presentation for any of that. So if you're talking about raining cats and dogs, somebody might not have any idea what you're talking about. Just steer clear of these colloquialisms and idiomatic languages, uses of idiomatic language that we tend to do without even realizing it. And see if you can even get a bit of insight into the different groups that are going to be in your audience, and try and have something in your presentation that is just for that particular group. Like if you're delivering to a group and you have a large Japanese contingent in your presentation, which is something I've had before, then make sure that you have some familiarity with things that are going to be useful for you to do, and appropriate for dealing with a Japanese audience. So be able to introduce yourself in Japanese if you can, or have a bit of an understanding, at least of, even if it's just referring to the journey time for them joining you, if they've flown to be at your presentation. Just acknowledge your audience in certain ways, but the more personalized you can make that, the better. So, if you do have particular languages and particular communities in your audience, personalize it a bit for them, make them feel special. Your audience are the stars, and so you want them to feel as special as possible. So there may be more things, but I think that's absolutely fine in terms of being able to do that. Okay, not seeing any more questions coming through, so I think we're going to wrap things up here. But I did promise that I would show you where you could go to find out more. We will do that in a moment. What I want you to do, though, is make a commitment to yourself to take at least one thing that you've learned in this presentation and do something with it. Put it into action, and commit yourself to working or improving on just one area. If it's how you talk about yourself, if it's practicing visualizing, if it's pumping up your energy with music and dance, whatever it is for you, take one thing from today's presentation and put it into practice in your own life, in your own presenting, and see what difference it can make. Imagine yourself feeling much better and more powerful, being able to just take it easy and feel cool as a presenter, or feeling great when you just delivered that great presentation online as well, and celebrating. Rather than being that person who's just sort of having everyone tune out, you can be something more than that. So if you want to start a podcast, for example, or you want to do much more online presentations, go for it. Don't wait. Now's actually a really great time to be getting into podcasting, because the medium is growing so fast. And I have to say, I absolutely love it. If you want to know if I can give you any help or advice on podcasting, just ask. I'll be happy to help. Because really, all these things are avenues to you being able to make more money online, being able to present well online, being able to podcast really well with fun on your podcast, being able to present yourself well in any professional situation is going to be a path to you being able to make more money. So go and grab yours, don't hang about, and put stuff into action. Have fun with this, but not too much fun. We don't want the hangovers at the end of it. And don't be a glutton on social media. Don't be a glutton with anything. And don't spend too much time watching the gossip or the celebrity news or the social media. Remember, keep yourself a bit socially distanced, focused on content creation more than anything else, and focus on being the best you can be at doing what actually is contributing to your growth in your business development, and actually helping and serving people in your audience as well, so that you are providing super value. Be a leader, be willing to lead the crowd where you go. And that means you have to make that shift from consumer to creator. Let people follow in your footsteps as you follow in the footsteps who've come from others before you as well. Don't be left behind in this digital age. It's absolutely critical. And let's look further ahead now to what you can do for your future. Where do you want to get to? What can you achieve? Okay, thank you for tuning into the presentation today. And if you want to know more about me, well, I highly encourage you to check out my podcast. My main podcast is called Speaking of Influence. You can find it on any major podcast servers. You can also find it on my YouTube channel, which is Present Influence. Let me just switch the banner here. Also, Points of Change. I need a sip of my coffee. Points of Change is my new show, which is much more about coaching, transformational journeys, and speaking with coaches and people who have transformed their lives, or helping others, serving others and helping them transform their lives and turn things around, how they did it, what have been the tools, what have been things that have helped them. Speaking of influence, again, much more about presentations, public speaking, tools of influence and persuasion. Some really great shows up there. It's a great fun show. If you are interested in presenting, public speaking, definitely check out a few episodes at least. Please like and subscribe to the show. Anyone who leaves me a review at the moment is going to get a shout out live on the show as well. So worth doing that. Look forward to seeing some reviews. Okay, so we've had our AMA, we've had our questions, ask anything. So that's pretty much it for today. If you want to know more about anything that I've talked about, please come and find me at presentinfluence.com. You can download there, if you want to talk better to yourself, you can download there the 5 key beliefs of bulletproof business speakers, which is going to help you be able to create the mindset of an amazing business speaker much quicker than you might have to wait for it till experience kicks in, which could take years to get to that level of self-belief as a speaker and presenter. And so this book is going to help you get there much quicker, in days rather than years. The 5 key beliefs of bulletproof speakers. Work on installing those beliefs into your life, and you are going to be giving kick-ass presentations every single time. Join me every day, every weekday for the Daily Present on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And do look out for upcoming episodes of all the podcasts. And I look forward to connecting with you again. So thanks for joining me. Thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to connecting with you again in the future. Have an amazing rest of your weekend. See you again.